Hey, it's Tim. Thanks for joining me again today. As always, I really appreciate the views, the comments, the likes. Hopefully you have all subscribed at this point in time. You know, I think I'm 4 years down the line on this channel now, but if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing it. It helps me get more views, more likes, more traction in the YouTube world, the vinyl community world. I want to talk about a couple interesting classic rock pop albums. One was from 1978, the other is from 1982. You're going to know these well when I talk about them, but the situation here is kind of strange when we kind of look into the pressing details. So first of all, I think most people who watch this channel, if you've been watching me for a while, you're probably in agreement with me. I have a philosophy that when I can find a clean, original pressing, hopefully the first press, I'm usually going to be really, really satisfied with the sound. First of all, it's about the music. We all know that. But I want to hear my favorite records in the best possible light, the best possible sound stage, according to my system, according to my ears. And I'm usually really, really happy with first pressings. Now, there's going to be situations where curiosity gets the better of you. And back, 5 years ago now, there was kind of a fear of missing out, FOMO, on some of these high-grade audiophile reissues, whether they are UHQRs or one-steps or artisanal small batch releases. Occasionally, it's okay. You can splurge, make a purchase like that. That reissue, the audiophile reissue versus the original press. Today, these two albums that I want to talk about, let's show you what I'm talking about. First of all, 1978, Billy Joel, The Stranger. Is it his best album? A lot of people think it is. A lot of people think this is probably all I need from Billy Joel. If you're a purist, I think this is really kind of all you need from Billy Joel. It has a really interesting mix of funk, soul, gospel. There's definitely some jazz elements in here. The very first pressing was a sterling cut. Mastering engineer Ted Jensen. You'll find copies of this all the time in the used bins with the little stamped sterling. Now, did you know that the record received a remaster? I don't know if it was 1979, 1980, 1981, but it was remastered at Masterdisc Mastering Studios in New York City by none other than Robert Ludwig. And spoiler alert, the Robert Ludwig cut is the better of the two U.S. pressings. Okay, now there's a third U.S. pressing, I guess I should mention. That would definitely be what is kind of classed as an audiophile reissue. This was the half-speed mastered CBS Master Sounds cut. This gets really close to the Robert Ludwig. But I still think the Robert Ludwig is depressing to have. How do you know if you have a Robert Ludwig pressing? Well, one thing I've noticed is there is an interesting little logo. It's the centennial of Columbia, I think, if I'm reading this right. You'll find that in the little corner right here. Is the camera going to focus? We'll see later. Anyway, it's right there. I haven't seen that logo on all of the earlier Sterling cuts. Now, the other way that you can tell, of course, is going and looking into the dead wax. I'm going to put up a picture. The Robert Ludwig cuts, they all begin with -2. In this case of the record I have in my hand, side A, I believe, is -2A. Now, the Sterling George Marino cuts, they all start with a -1. So we know we're on a different cut, -2. So why is it that this was recut and sent to a different mastering house? There are theories out there on the internet. Phil Ramone was the producer of this record, and Robert Ludwig, his first job in the industry was an assistant to Phil Ramone. Somewhere in New York City with, I can't remember what company, but it's out there. There's a really good post on the Steve Hoffman forums about this. So that's a theory. Now, another theory that I have, I'm just kind of putting my finger in the sky. We know that this record sold really, really well. We also know that Phil Ramone is a little bit of a stickler for good sound. Maybe he heard what a lot of people hear in that Sterling cut, and they're hearing kind of a degraded recording, a tinny sound in the drums, and believe me, the Ludwig cut is all about the drums, I think, and just better tonality, more lifelike sounding drums instead of like a tinny, veiled drum sound that you get on some of these songs on the Sterling cut. So maybe Phil Ramone decided he wanted to have somebody recut this. And maybe the thing just sold so well, they had to do another mastering, and they decided to give it to Bob Ludwig. Don't know how it happened, but I will tell you, these are pretty rare these days. I just found another one. I now have two. I'm probably going to let one of these go in a future record sale that I'll probably do in the spring. Is it spring yet? Well, we just sprung forward. So yeah, there's an interesting case of a rare reissue that I love, that I think beats the first pressing. I have a few listening notes on The Stranger. The very first song, side 1, Moving Out. Listen closely to the outro. Whether you have the Sterling or hopefully you do have the Master Disc RL cut. The last 40 seconds is where we get Billy Joel's piano lines, really nice full resonance to that piano tone. And then we get very nice dynamic drum fills with toms and plenty of space and air between those drum hits. Very dynamic, almost 3D sounding. And then, of course, we've got that realistic sounding motorcycle as they kind of peel out and we hit the end of the song. So, Moving Out, listen to the last 45 seconds and see what you think. If you have the Sterling cut, turn up the volume, listen closely. Are you 100% satisfied with that sound, those sounds? Trust me, I think you will be more satisfied with the RL cut. Side 2, back to the drums again. Only the Good Die Young. The opening fill, the drum fill. To me, it sounds kind of tinny and anemic on that Sterling cut. And it sounds much more fuller, much more dynamic, a little more heft, a little more punch to those drums on the RL cut. Finally, get it right the first time. This is almost kind of got a Steely Dan-ish flavor to it. Quite jazzy. And you get that halftime shuffle to lead off the song. straight out of Babylon Sisters or other songs. The next one I'm going to talk about, there's a lot of halftime shuffle by one of the masters. So I'm pretty sure that was Liberty DeVito, Billy Joel's old longtime drummer, doing that cool halftime shuffle to lead into Get It Right the First Time. Now, the other situation with this record, the RL cut, kind of interesting. It came with one of these old style Columbia kind of half moon inner sleeves. I have, of course, swapped out a brand new rice paper, but that's that. That is the curious case of the recut from a different mastering house early in the production run for The Stranger, Billy Joel, 1978. Fantastic record. In April 1982, Toto released Toto IV. Some people hate it, some people love it. I think it's a fantastic record. And guess what? This also received the recut. Not too far down the line from the original release. The original release was cut at Sterling by George Marino. The recut was done at the mastering lab by, I would presume, to be Doug Sax. It might have been Mike Reese, who was Doug Sax's right-hand man, but probably Doug Sax took this on, a release of this stature. If you see this particular pressing, just looking at it from the outside, there's a big hint here that you can know this is a later pressing, and hopefully when you dig into this, you're going to see TML in the dead wax. But look, winner of 6 Grammy Awards. Well, the Grammy Awards for the Toto record happened in 1983. So we know now that this was dated, easily dated, beyond the April 1982 pressings that were done at Sterling. Now, we also have a barcode on the back cover. I've actually, I guess that doesn't really help because my earlier issue also has a barcode. So again, what you need to do is, if you find a record that still has this hype on it, there's a really, really good chance that you're going to have a TML cut. And the TML cut was done at Pittman. You can see a little P in the dead wax. And then, of course, you're going to see that iconic stamped TML, and it'll have -M or -X or -S. I think I have -M here for master lathe. And I will tell you, the Sterling cut by George Marino is a good sounding record. This was engineered by legendary engineer Al Schmidt, and Toto, they had a big budget for this record, and they utilized not one, not two, but 3 24-track consoles to record this thing. And this is a glorious sounding record, but it just has even more separation and a little more punch and a little more depth on that TML cut. It is quite noticeable, to me anyway. So that is Toto IV. Another case where we got a recut and a reissue not too far down the line, like maybe a year later. This was sent over to the mastering lab, the tapes, and Doug Sax worked his magic. Okay, more listening notes for Toto IV. I did a video I think it was called The Album, and I talked about song sequencings for albums and the fact that there needs to be tentpole songs or tracks as part of any album. And that's usually you want to kick off the album with something fantastic. It could have been a lead single. That's going to be position 1. Then you want to maybe lead down and have a lasting memory at the end of side 1, so your final track on side 1. And then another tent pole would be usually the beginning of side 2 and then the final song of the record. So in my eyes, we have 3 tent pole tracks on Toto 4. Of course, Rosanna. Jeff Porcaro's halftime shuffle sounds incredible. Basically lifted from Bernard Purdie, who he worked with, and also Led Zeppelin's John Bonham. That's that halftime shuffle that leads off of Rosanna. And then there's that swirling, kind of growing synth middle section by mad scientist Steve Porcaro, Jeff's brother. Absolutely fantastic, and there's a lot of harmonic heft on the TML pressing. And then finally we get one of the best guitar solos of the 1980s, Lukather's screaming guitar solo after Steve Porcaro's kind of synth section. And then Lukather just kind of runs with it, and it's amazing. Now, there are organ stabs and fills by David Paich that really just have a lot of groove and a lot of soul. And you can tell a lot of that was just like feel from David Paich. And who knows how many takes, they had to do for the final cut that ends up on the record, but lot of really great organ figures by David Paich. And then the outro piano that is also David Paich. And that turned into kind of it wasn't planned. And David Paich just kind of did this outro piano figures, and I think he just kind of kept going, and they kept the tape rolling, and there was then improvised amazing guitar work by Lukather, and just awesome way to end Rosanna. So that's tent pole number 1. Number 2, Africa. This has got an amazing drum fill from Jeff Porcaro. You can basically hear the tuning on the toms. And this is the opening kind of drum fill. Hurry boy, it's waiting there for you. And then we've got Porcaro with the drum fill on the toms. And this is just amazing sounding on the TML pressing. And lastly, conveniently enough, if you read the hype sticker, I think the third tentpole track is I Won't Hold You Back. That, of course, is Lukather on lead vocal, and some amazing, lovely guitar work on that. Really good emotive vocal from Lukather as well. So that's that. This is 1982 Toto 4. This pressing, as far as I can tell, came out sometime in the middle to late 1983, capitalizing on the Grammy Awards. And this was, the tapes were sent over to TML. Doug Sachs did the cut, and we have something that beats the original pressing that was done at Sterling. Whew. There you have it. I'm going to be writing about these records as part of a new newsletter that I will tell you about pretty soon. I'm still working on it right now, but when I launch that newsletter, I welcome everyone to subscribe and check it out. If you want even more ramblings, and maybe you don't have to look at me on camera, maybe you like to read, and maybe you like to read about interesting records, that's something that's coming, sometime in the next month or two, and I'll keep you updated on that. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll be back soon.